Hey there, it's Ian Ugarte. I get asked many questions and commentary about the housing market and what's happening and why are APRA changes and why are taxes going on. And I'll probably just put a series of dot points together for you in a couple of different videos so that you understand the housing market and what's happening, and more in particular, how you can actually get yourself into a really safe position, making sure that you invest with a strategy that's going to protect you, that's going to save you against any downfall in the property market, that's going to give you cash flow, and in the long term give you a lot of wealth. So firstly, let's talk about how the housing market in Australia in 2019 got to where it is right now. I firstly want to say that housing markets and housing cycles happen at different times around the country. So the thing with Sydney and Melbourne is that people automatically say that when the Sydney and Melbourne market starts to drop or flatten out, that the rest of the country is in the same doom and gloom. The fact is it's not. We've got Perth and Darwin, and Tasmania's just had its kick, and I wouldn't go to Tasmania now. You're probably 6 months to 18 months too late in that area. But Perth and Darwin are now on a different cycle. And remember that Sydney and the Melbourne market brought in some APRA changes. Now, the way that the APRA changes were brought in originally was just a stupid way of doing it. What it actually did was inflated the market. So here is APRA, the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, that's trying to control a housing market that was continuously out of control for the last 200 years. And what they did was they took sophisticated investors out of the marketplace and allowed unsophisticated investors to push the market in the wrong direction. Let me give you an example of this. When APRA made its original changes about 3 or 4 years ago, and they limited the amount of borrowing that could happen to someone by putting a ceiling rate in of 7.25%. There are times where we went to some lenders that were looking at all our portfolio across the whole board at 8.8% and then saying to us, well, you don't have enough income. Now, I can tell you we've got a very decent and healthy income. Now, what happened there was it took people like Christine and myself out of the standard everyday lending marketplace and put us into the back place of looking at more strategic ways of being able to get into properties. And we did. We did many different and continue to do many different properties that are low money down or no money down or have different options available to them. But by taking us out of the strategic standard marketplace, what it did was it took us out, it took every other sophisticated investor out, and we were still interested in the market. I mean, it's our job. We constantly look at markets. We constantly look at projects. We constantly turn up at auctions. And here we are, sitting at the back of an auction, watching this auction going on, and myself and other sophisticated investors are there to see what's going on. And what happens? The mum and dad investor, who has never bought an investment property but owns their own home under the APRA rules 3 years ago, were in a position to be able to go out and buy a property when we were not, because we had a bigger portfolio with more loans against it. What did that do? It meant that the mum and dad investors that were sitting in the front row while we're sitting in the back row started to bid on housing. Housing that they had done no feasibilities on, housing that they were emotionally involved in, housing that they were told by the dentist and the taxi driver that they needed to get into. And then what happened was the front row started bidding against each other, and all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, the property market got pushed further up and the prices started to go even further into a skyrocket, and it was just a stupid thing. Here we are, all the sophisticated investors sitting in the back row of the auctions, looking at each other and going, I cannot believe that these people have gone out and bought this property for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $600,000 too much, especially in the Sydney market. And all on the vise that they could go out and they could get a townhouse development or a unit development approval. And all of a sudden they go out and they get an approval, they do the numbers, they work out that it's not going to make any money, and what happens then? They put it on the marketplace, and then another sophisticated investor goes out and buys a DA approved property that is not going to do them any good, and we're still standing back going, that's absolutely crazy. So what APRA did 3 or 4 years ago actually increased the price of properties in Sydney and Melbourne. It was a stupid move. What they should have done was they should have said, hey, you know, you're a sophisticated investor. We know that you know how to do feasibilities. We know that this is your property game, that this is the way that you earn income, and that you're not going to go into property deals and you're not going to lose money because you've done all the background research, due diligence, you've done the feasibilities, you know that the market's doing the right thing for you in a flat market, and you're working your numbers out as a flat marketplace. So for you, if you own 3, 4, 6 properties, we're going to actually allow you to lend some more money so that you can continue doing investing. And what we're going to do is, to the mum and dad investors, unless they can actually put a business case forward that they know what they're doing in property, we're going to make it hard for them to buy into the property. That would have stopped the marketplace and leveled it out, and we would have had a normal condition. Now, we do have a change in the marketplace. I'll talk about that in the next video.